Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of the Shutter Sports Refresh. I'm your host Finn Noel, bringing you all of the most important news in sports from the past week. Let's get started with some hockey playoffs. To start things off, the Toronto Maple Leafs, after starting their series against the Florida Panthers 2-0, have now dropped 2 in a row, so the series is tied 2-2. The Panthers goalie Sergei Bobrovsky kept the Leafs scoreless in Game 4 as the Panthers went on to score 2 goals of their own, winning 2-0. Another exciting series in the Eastern Conference for hockey playoffs is the Washington Capitals versus the Carolina Hurricanes, where surprisingly the number 1 seeded Capitals are down 2-1. Moving over to the West now, the exciting series to watch is the Dallas Stars versus the Winnipeg Jets. The Jets have performed very well in all 3 games so far, but the Stars just performed better in 2 of them, and the Stars lead the series 2-1. And it's not looking so good for the Canadian teams in the NHL right now, but there is one Canadian team that's up, and that's the Edmonton Oilers, who lead the Las Vegas Golden Knights 2-1. These round 2 series are still ongoing and will be continuing to go on for the next week or so make sure to tune back into the refresh next week and we'll give you some updates. Speaking of playoff hockey, the PWHL is officially in playoff mode as the semifinals have been going down throughout the past week. The first series is between the Toronto Scepters and last year's champions Minnesota Frost. And while Game 1 was a 3-2 win for the Scepters, this game was a thriller, ending 7-5 for the Frost. So that means the series is tied 1-1. And keep in mind that these series are a best of 5 games, so first to 3 wins. And then the other series is the Ottawa Charge versus the Montreal Victoire. That series is tied up at 1 apiece as each team won a 3-2 game of their own. Let's continue with playoff news. As we all know, it is playoff season, so there's tons of exciting stuff going on. Let's move into NBA basketball now, where their playoffs have been especially exciting. We're in the conference semifinals now, so there are 2 matchups in each conference, and in the East, the lower seed is winning in both matchups. In a surprising turn of events, the Indiana Pacers are up 3-1 on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavaliers, as we've talked about on the channel before, were a regular season juggernaut, and although a little bit injured, it is still a huge surprise that they're down 3-1 this early in the playoffs. And the other series in the East is the New York Knicks versus the Boston Celtics, where the Celtics blew a lead in the 4th quarter in the first 2 games. Now, the Celtics are last year's champions, so blowing a lead like this, especially in the 4th quarter and a playoff game, is very uncharacteristic. Moving over to the Western Conference now, the more exciting series has been the Denver Nuggets versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Right now, that series is tied at 2-2, and there have been blowouts, and there have also been super close games. The main storyline with this series, though, is the 2 top candidates for the MVP award, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for the Thunder and Nikola Jokic for the Nuggets. The MVP hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to come soon, so if the winner of this series ends up winning the MVP, that would just be ridiculously exciting. And for our last series in the NBA here, the Minnesota Timberwolves are currently leading 2-1 against the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors are mainly down because of their superstar being injured. Steph Curry has been out with a hamstring injury that he suffered early in Game 1. And without Steph Curry, the Warriors are no match for the Timberwolves superstar Anthony Edwards. Stay tuned for more action in the NBA, including the draft lottery, which goes down tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Let's move into the MLB now as the season continues to chug along and some teams have solidified themselves at the top. The Detroit Tigers are currently enjoying the best record in the American League, now 10 games over 500, only 40 games into the season. Their divisional running mates will be wishing they were in a different division though. The Cleveland Guardians and Kansas City Royals have had to settle for wildcard spots right now, even though they have better records than both the New York Yankees and Seattle Mariners. Both of those teams lead their divisions. The rest of the American League teams are all hovering around 500, looking to go on a separate run themselves. The NL has a stacked division in the NL West, with the LA Dodgers leading and the San Francisco Giants and San Diego Padres having to settle for wildcard spots. The New York Mets and Chicago Cubs have also enjoyed good starts and are atop the NL East and Central. But the hottest team in the entire MLB are the St. Louis Cardinals. They've won their last 8 in a row and have now been flung into playoff contention. Will they continue the streak? You'll have to come back next week and tune into the Shutter Sports Refresh to find out. Moving on to our next news, UFC 315 went down in Montreal this weekend, so here are the results. The main card was for the welterweight championship. In one corner of this main event, it was Jack Della Maddalena, who lost the first 2 fights of his career but has since won 17 straight. His opponent was the welterweight champion Belal Muhammad. This fight would go all 5 rounds, but at the end of the day, Jack Della Maddalena won this fight by decision. The other big fight in this event was the women's flyweight title, and in this one it was the legendary Valentina Shevchenko who retained her title against the French fighter Manon Fiorot. Congrats to them both. And finally, let's end with what everyone's waiting to hear, the Champions League playoffs. This is the second leg of the semifinals, so a massive part of the year. After a 3-3 draw in their first leg, both Inter Milan and Barcelona knew that their second leg would be extremely important. And it was Inter Milan who would strike first in the second leg with 2 goals in the first half. Barcelona knew they had to strike back, and strike back they did, as early in the second half they went up 3-2, scoring 3 goals in a row. And just before extra time was added, Inter Milan scored, and during that extra time, Inter Milan scored again to win the game 4-3 and move on to the Champions League finals. And in the other Champions League semifinals, PSG beat Arsenal in their first leg, and they won again in the second leg, this time 2-1, moving on to play Inter Milan in the Champions League finals. For the Champions League final, it is just one game, winner takes all, and like I said, between Inter Milan and PSG, this will go down on May 31st. And that's all we have for this week on the Shutter Sports Refresh. I've been your host, Finn Noel, and I hope you enjoyed watching and learned something today. You can check me, the writer Lucky Roberts, and of course Shutter Sports Media out on Instagram here. Thanks for watching.